It is Locked On Jazz for the 31st of January. Joe Ingles goes down with a non-contact left knee injury. The person, the member of the franchise, where Joe is in his life right now, what the evolution of him as a player has been, what it means for the Jazz on the floor, the locker room, and in the trade market. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen. We are free and available on all platforms, and if you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe and hit the bell to get notified whenever we put up episodes. Obviously, last night the Jazz lost. The loss is another one, but the real loss, Joe Ingles sets his left foot. His knee, it seems to crumble / explode, whatever awful word you want to use. And it is every indication we will hear today the Joe Ingles season, if not more, has come to an end with the Utah Jazz, and we will talk about it and break it down. We will look at it from every angle possible. A lot of people said it's got to be a happy hat day. It's not a happy hat day. Tomorrow, we can go happy hat. It'll be February. We can get this terrible month of January out. The month of January has been a flat-out disaster for the Utah Jazz. 4-12, Rudy hurt, Donovan hurt, COVID, and now Joe Ingles seemingly for the season, or if not ending his Jazz career, if not ending his entire career, time will tell. So let's just talk about Joe for a second. I've called every single one of his games of his career, I realized this morning. He's probably the player that is the most, I know the best as a person. I've had the longest conversations with. The funny thing for me with Joe is there's the veneer, which is kind of the pest, and he's always poking. He's a little bit of a bully at times. And then when you get below that veneer, you get this wonderful, deep, thoughtful person. And if, I feel like know him pretty well, and really just my kind of pain I have for he and his family today is real. I can't stop hearing the scream from last night that came through our headphones through the effects. We tried to get it off the air as fast as possible. I don't know if we did. So he came to us in one of the great NBA stories of all time. Assuming you know it by now, but it's worth telling again. He's played in Europe. He's in Barcelona. He's actually not having a great run. He's left Australia where he set a bunch of records. He goes to FC Barcelona, which he described to me was the New York Yankees of European basketball. If you get offered a job there, you have to go take it. He doesn't like it. He doesn't play a lot. He goes to Maccabi of Tel Aviv and plays there. And then he tries to make it back to the NBA. He's actually been to the Warriors camp before, and he's been released. I believe he'd been to the Memphis Grizzlies or Summer League and been to the Memphis Grizzlies Summer League. And in neither case did he get offered anything. And so he goes to the Clippers, and he's in Clippers camp, and it's October 25th, and the season's about to start. And Renee, his, I think then girlfriend, I don't think fiance, is flying over from Australia in an awfully long flight to LA to see his NBA debut. And while she's in the air, he gets released. And Joe has to meet her at the airport and say, well, we get a nice vacation in Southern California, but you're not seeing my NBA debut. 2 days later, he signs with the Utah Jazz. Quinn Snyder had seen Joe play in Europe when Quinn was an assistant for Ettore Messina in CSKA Moscow, was aware of his game. Dennis Lindsay and his staff was aware of the game of Joe's game, and they signed Joe. And Joe comes to us really in a lot of our minds as Dante Exum's caddy. If you remember that Dante Exum is with the team, it's the 2014-15 team. We're not good. And Joe's going to come, and it seems like Joe's going to come and just be, honestly, a bit piece that's going to make sure that the 18-year-old Australian whose first autograph he ever got in his life was Joe Ingles is going to be okay. And Joe plays 4 minutes in the opener and 11 in a game after that. And Joe misses his first 7 shots, 3-point shots of his career. He opens his NBA career, I think, going 2 of 11 and he takes 11 shots in the first 6 games. I mean, he scores 4 points in his opening 6 games. The shot's too slow. The legs are too slow. The body's too slow. There's no way this guy is going to become much of anything. And yet Joe works and develops a game that becomes totally viable. His first 17 games of his NBA career, he shoots 37% and 30% from 3. And then in December, he shoots 20% from 3. I mean, there's a legitimate thought. I look back on this and remember, like when we hit January 1 and hit the guarantee date of his rookie year, he's played 32 games. He's shooting 39% from the field and 25% from 3, playing 16 minutes a night, scoring 3 points a game. Like there's a real chance that he's not making the club or getting out of January at that point. Now, luckily, we're not very good. And he kind of stays with it. And then it starts to click in after January. He actually has a pretty good month of January shooting the 3, but nothing else. And by the end of the year, he's kind of worked it together. In the 14-15 season, by the end, Joe is actually playing and has suddenly maybe established himself as somewhat of an NBA player at that point. He then, in July of 2015, which is that off season, he played for $500,000. He signs a 2-year, $4.5 million contract with the Jazz at the end of 2015. So he's going to get 2 years in the league. It's probably more than he ever expected. And he works with Zach Guthrie, Jazz assistant coach, and he suddenly has become a bona fide shooter. And now everyone is getting up on him. So he learns a little bit of an off the bounce 3. And then he's talked about this a lot. The next step in the process is the playoffs, where they expose him, and he suddenly realizes that he has to be able to go right. And they're not going to let him in the playoffs go right. He ends up in the playoff series. I think it was against the Houston Rockets. When we get beat, he goes 14 of 32, or maybe he was 8 of 29. He shoots 28% and 32. This is into 2019. But now it's the next step, and he adds this kind of long, outstretched right-hand dribble that gets him that open 3. And last year, he has the season that is the reason we go 52-20. When people want to know why the Utah Jazz went 52-20 last year, the answer is because of Rudy Gobert, obviously Donovan, but Joe Ingles. Joe Ingles had the Kyle Korver year of the Atlanta Hawks team that surprised everyone and really became an incredible offensive asset. In the meantime, we've got the stories. We've got the Memphis headband. We've got the Paul George playoff series. And then we've got the heartfelt, his son. We go through with him. This is everything you've ever wanted out of a player in your franchise. You're experiencing his life with him. And he was very open about it. His son is diagnosed with autism. He has a very poor first half of the season. I remember being with Zach Guthrie in a hotel, I think in San Francisco, where I finally asked him, like, what is wrong with Joe? And he was just going through a lot of stuff. And didn't know what it was. And then after All-Star break, he comes out and announces that his son Jacob has autism. And then I think if we ask Joe what the highlight of his career will be that autism night with the Utah Jazz, where they truly put on an incredible night. Joe's openly said that is the most awesome night of his career. And I think that's, probably the night that puts a capsule on it. So where is Joe? There's some other aspects of it we'll continue to dig in. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also in Logan. The Chevy lineup of trucks, we know it well. It's the Silverado and the Colorado. The Silverado is the absolute awesome, big, massive truck. You feel like you're sitting in a lazy boy chair having the greatest time of your life. The Colorado's the nimble truck that you use is kind of around the house, getting everything done. The SUV lineup is vastly underrated. The Equinox, the Blazer, and the Trax, all there for you. And then the Tahoe and the Suburban, the Utah County assault vehicles that come after you. It's all at Murdoch Chevy. The Murdochs will not charge more than MSRP. They have vowed not to take advantage of the customers during this stretch of time with the car shortage. If you'd like to have a VIP meeting at Murdoch Chevy in Woods Cross or in Murdoch Chevy in Logan, feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up over at Murdoch Chevy in Woods Cross and in Linden. As we continue with Joe, I think we grew to understand him a little bit. There was this fun that he kind of poked. There was the math teacher, the substitute math teacher that everyone claimed him to be. But then we also knew he was our guy, right? The rest of as we were winning and what the world was watching Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, and we knew that we had something in Joe Ingles. That was kind of, I think, but part of it is that we understood that Joe was better than anyone else realized. He brought more to the table. And so in that sense, he kind of was our secret of our guy in all of that. This locker room has been a special place from Ricky Rubio to Jay Crowder. Now with this most recent group that went through a lot of tumultuous stuff with COVID and then into its existence now. And I have to feel that Joe's at the cornerstone in the middle of a lot of it. Sometimes Joe can be the grandest grump of all grumps, but I think at the core of it, he's the one who jokes and funs and brings the group together. George Niang was that as well. We'll touch on that locker room as well. And I think, he deserves a lot of credit of that. And so we've seen this run and who knows, where Joe is right now. He's accomplished his number one goal of his career. He got the medal for Australia. He's 33 years old. He is a free agent, 34 years old. He's a free agent at the end of the season. He has a wonderful wife, 3 incredible kids, this amazing family. I don't know, is that a circumstance in which he's a free agent? He probably this injury probably cost him at minimum $15 million, which is just gut wrenching. I know, fine. He's got 55. It's still $15 million. It's a lot. And frankly, with the way he and Renee, their philanthropy that they've done with autism, it's crushing that I think they would have used a lot of it for that. And so that's even crushing for our community. So I don't know what happens with Joe next. If in fact the results of the MRI and everything are what we anticipate them to be today and what all the indications are, does he decide that a year rehab on a minimum contract or slightly above minimum contract, probably in Utah at that point, is worth it? Or does he just decide this has been an amazing run from the day I picked Renee up at the airport to being able to have the autism night, to getting in Paul George's head, to having a special franchise and just be a part of the Utah Jazz forever, as will have played every single game for this franchise? Time will tell. And we'll see. On the podcast, we'll continue and talk about him as a player, where he is, what he brought to the franchise, and what it will mean for the Jazz on the court. Then we'll also look as well as some other impacts on the Jazz in the locker room, and then the trade landscape of things as we continue. On YouTube, we're breaking it up into segments. So this is the close of this segment. If you want more, there's more on Locked on Jazz on the YouTube end of things.